Go on, I'm fascinated.
James Bond had been introduced to cinemagoers in 1962's Dr. No, a film that surpassed the filmmaker's expectations, which in turn had a follow-up put into production immediately. That second film would not be called James Bond 2 or The Return of James Bond, but From Russia with Love.
Turn the catches like that.
That's right.
And open ordinarily.
In 1962, Dr. No had done much better than expected, ticking over into profit from its UK release alone, and so producers Harry Saltzman and Albert R. Cubby Broccoli quickly put their next James Bond film into production, even before Dr. No had opened in North America. 1963's From Russia with Love, while being only the second film in the series, would be one of the few examples of a Bond movie that would keep closely to the original Ian Fleming book. A faithful adaptation of source material was not something that you saw in movies all that often. Just look at the ill-advised attempt at an old Yeller cinematic universe, which certainly went places. Fleming's 1957 book had done okay, but its popularity skyrocketed after US President John F. Kennedy, who was an avid reader and literate, cited From Russia with Love as one of his favourite books. Most, but not all, the production personnel from Dr. No would return for the sequel, with Terence Young returning to the director's chair. From Russia with Love would define several elements that would become synonymous with the series: a pre-title sequence, a credit sequence with suggestive silhouettes, and a henchman who would be the main physical threat to Bond. It also showed us some of the workings of the criminal organisation Spectre, with its leader Blofeld being shown, sort of, for the first time. And oh, look at the pudding kid, it's so cute, look at the kitty, it's adorable.
Well, really, I'm not too busy at the moment, sir.
The storyline is fairly simple. Criminal organisation Spectre are looking to lure the British Secret Service into a trap and have them blamed for stealing a Russian cipher machine known as the Lector. Now, if you know anything about World War II history, you know that it's basically the German Enigma machine. Ian Fleming here demonstrated his insider knowledge from his time in intelligence during the war. The Enigma machine was still a fairly well-kept secret up until the 1970s. Now, other things that were fairly well-kept secrets up until the 1970s were video games, ROM Space Knight, and female orgasms. The Lector tech may seem old hat today, just like Connery's toupee cover, but the early 60s was still an analogue world. Digital communication and imaging were decades off, which means at this time, James Bond would have to send unsolicited photographs of his penis away for processing before he could send them to Moneypenny. Spectre's plan is overseen by Russian defector Colonel Rosa Klebb, who assigns Tanya, a cipher clerk at the Russian consulate in Istanbul, to pretend to defect with the Lector.
I will say nothing to anyone.
If you do, you will be shot.
But only if James Bond is sent to Collector and the Lector for Spectre. Holy shit.
But she's mental.
There's a bit more to the plot than rhymes and Tanya standing at the airport with a sign, but basically their first date skips past the awkward small talk and comedic attempts to order dinner in a French restaurant despite being in an Italian restaurant.
I think my mouth is too big.
Spectre's plan also involves a bit more of a personal touch. Not only do they want Bond to steal a machine for them, but they also want revenge on him for Dr. No's death. So the plan is to film Bond and Tanya sleeping together, kill them, and use the revenge porn film as a smokescreen for the theft of the device. It is a bit over the top, but this plan has been developed by chess champion Kronstein.
My reading of the British mentality is that they always treat a trap as a challenge.
A man for whom a list of groceries ends up as a 10-page epic, with diagrams and graphs. The film also shows us a horrifying prediction of the rise of Twitch streamers, hordes of gawping fools getting aroused over watching somebody else play a game. The bulk of the film is set in Istanbul, with interludes in Yugoslavia and Italy, which provides a nice contrast to the tropical locations of Dr. No, but it was a necessity as Jamaican authorities were still burying all of the corpses left behind by James Bond. From Russia with Love is almost a travelogue, but without Michael Palin's voiceover that reminds you that he was once funny.
Everyone's seen Venice from in front of a singing gondolier or squashed in a launch with a guide, but there are other Venetians well off the tourist track who know the canals is boring work.
This Grant's one of the best men we've ever had. Homicidal paranoiac, superb material.
Something that Dr. No lacked, that would become a staple of the series, was a physically menacing henchman to do all of Spectre's really important killing. Red Grant was an escaped British murderer and now trained as a Spectre agent, where he's an expert in hand-to-hand combat, marksmanship, and an agile scrum master. Grant shadows Bond for much of the film, keeping other people from killing Bond until he's ready to kill Bond.
You may know the right ones. The other one on your knees.
Bond is also helped by the head of Station T in Turkey, Kerem Bey, the local spy master who employs mainly family members as his staff. Well, I hope they're not all family members, where he spends most of his day playing full-contact gin rummy.
All I want is that Lector.
All? Are you sure that's all you want?
Bey is one of Bond's most charismatic sidekicks, but like many of Bond's sidekicks, he does not make it through to the final act. At one point, Bey and Bond hunt down a Russian agent who escaped through a billboard promoting the film Call Me Buana, which was coincidentally produced by Saltzman and Broccoli. Product placement in the James Bond film, even then. They engineer a noisy break-in to steal the Lector from the Russian consulate, and Bond, Bey and Tanya board the Orient Express, thinking that they're going to be safe there because nobody has ever been murdered on the Orient Express. Except for Bey, and what's worse, they can't get a refund for his return ticket without incurring a bullshit restocking fee. Grant replaces Bond's contact in Yugoslavia and then begins the slow process where Bond finally realises that Grant isn't entirely as gormless as he had first appeared. Grant clearly has issues even when he has the upper hand over Bond. He's not just there to kill Bond, but to humiliate him as well. Which for some reason reminds me of the last time I had lunch with my in-laws. A fight ensues. Bond and Tanya deal with a helicopter throwing grenades at them, which does seem like an odd thing to do if they're interested in recovering the Lector. Then there's a fantastic boat chase.
Jesus, did you see that?
And then finally, Bond has to deal with Rosa Klebb's penalty kick in Venice.
She's had her kicks.
From Russia with Love was a confident James Bond film, but one where the hero hasn't completely turned into Commander Jock Smug of Smuggling Yard's S Division. The S is for smug. But still thrilling and exciting and filled with interesting characters. The absolute polar opposite of Uncle Reg's tell-all memoir, It Wasn't Me, Gov, I Swear. From Russia with Love is the first time Desmond Llewellyn appeared as Q, here showing Bond the ins and outs of a trick briefcase that every kid of the day could tell you holds a sniper rifle, a knife, 50 gold sovereigns, and a tear gas canister, which would explode if you opened it the wrong way. While the briefcase is the first time the series would introduce gadgets, it's still one of the few times that the series ever bothered to give Bond something to carry them in. I too have a trick briefcase. In it you can find a half-eaten apple, some random loose change amounting to about 50 cents, and an unread hardback copy of Roger Moore's book, My Word is My Bond. Connery is still new to playing Bond, and he's obviously enjoying the role. His portrayal of Bond is a little less vulnerable than in Dr. No. He's a lot more confident and closer to how people think Bond is supposed to be. Bond is given the chance to settle a catfight between two women over their shared lover in a gypsy camp.
This might take some time.
His solution, disappointingly, a three-handed game of Scrabble.
Okay, girls, just for giggles, I want you to call me Cubby.
Daniela Bianchi was a former beauty queen who'd become an actor. Well, that's two things you needed to be a Bond woman in the 60s. Tanya's influence on subsequent Bond paramours is subtle, but the scene where Bond and Tanya first meet would be used as an audition scene for potential Bond and Bond women for decades to come. The film is composer John Barry's first chance to score an entire Bond film on his own, and he immediately sets up the Bond style that would be associated with the series pretty much until the end of time, or 2076, whichever comes first. Barry may have hoped to sweep away Monty Norman's James Bond theme with his own creation, called 007, and while Barry used it in a few films, it was the James Bond theme that stuck with audiences like an oyster flash mob. One highlight of the film was the fight scene between Bond and Red Grant on the Orient Express. Its kinetic action combined with then groundbreaking jump cutting delivered the film's most iconic moments. Later films would also attempt fights on trains, but none came close to the visceral action on display here. The film's production was not without its issues. A car crash sidelined Daniela Bianchi for a few weeks. A helicopter crash could have seen the film without key personnel, including the director. Actor Pedro Armendariz was dying, and his scenes were arranged to be completed first so he could complete what would be his final role. The film's schedules ran long, and there needed to be reshoots to clarify the plot and a remount of the film's climax. Much of the film's opening act had scenes reordered in post-production in order to make the story flow better. They were still shooting parts of the film just a few months before the film's premiere. From Russia with Love is a really good film with a cracking plot exciting action sequences, a cast that was still invested in the proceedings, but it still feels grounded and down to earth, or as down to earth as you'll get in a film with a sex addict with a passport and a prescription for some really strong antibiotics. From Russia with Love had a budget twice the size of Dr. No, and its travelogue plot puts a lot of exotic locations on the screen. There were some changes from the book, most notably the book's antagonists were the Soviet spy agency SMERSH, but the producers at the time wanted to tone down Cold War elements and instead we have Spectre. Also, Spectre sounds way cooler and they've got better boots than SMERSH with their cabbage garrots and potato-based nerve agents. The film did very well, I mean very, very, very well, meaning there would be an expectation for more James Bond films. As a postscript, there would be a 2005 video game adaptation of From Russia with Love. Video game publisher Electronic Arts had seen Nintendo and Rareware's huge success with GoldenEye 007, and EA swooped in with a giant check for the rights to make officially licensed games based on the film series. Some of their games followed the plots of actual films and a few were original stories, but none found the sales success or critical acclaim of GoldenEye 007. From Russia with Love was a little different in that it was based on an older film where they had also written a check big enough to coax Sean Connery out of retirement to record voiceovers in what would be his final performance as James Bond.
I think it's just begun.
From Russia with Love would be a hard act to top, but 1 year later, the next Bond adventure would end up being the definitive James Bond movie for decades.
He was right, you know.
If you enjoyed this review, please like and subscribe, leave a comment below, or check out some of our other videos.